Hey everyone, Kilimanjaro Railway here, coming live to you from my brother's room. We're not in my room because it's a complete mess and a lot of clutter. Here's some noise in the background. That's my youngest brother who's having his birthday party. That's going on right now. That's what you're hearing. But I want to bring your attention to this. This is the new Venturi. This is the Airsoft one, by the way. 6mm M1 Carbine Airsoft gun. So as you can see, I'm not going to do a review on this tonight, but rather a slight overview of some modifications I've done to it. Now once a year I get to do these modifications. I'd like to do them more often, but because I'm working and because of time constraints and because of my involvement with my other hobby, which is cars, I don't get to do this very often. But when I do it the very best I can. Here's another modification I'm quite proud of, and that's the World War II configuration of the M1 Carbine. They all came like this. None of them were issued and saw action with the Type 2 and Type 3 rear sights and that bayonet lug. And to be frank with you, I'm sorry, it looks better this way. It really cleans up the gun. It really cleans up the front end. I like this style of sight better. It's a little hard for me to zero because I'm used to the old style rear sight, or the Type 2, Type 3 style rear sight with the adjustment knob over here. But man, oh man, this is much better. If you remember last year, I showed you a 1928 A1 Thompson. I converted from a 1928 Thompson by King Arms. It's the electric blowback version. Yeah. Some tongue twisting there. So without getting too much into it, I'll show you what I've done. Okay, so barrel band in rear sight. This can be purchased off eBay together by this one seller, or you can purchase it, these parts individually. I'll show you the easy one first because it's a quick walkthrough. Okay, take off your front sight. It's held in with a, get some light on this. It's held in with a little Allen head screw, probably about 2.5 millimeters big. That comes off. You'll have to put it back on later, but you take your old bayonet lug and Type 2 barrel band off. It's one whole unit. You put the new one on. You screw it in place right here with this flathead screw. You're done. You lock that in place. I don't know why, but mine has like a 1/16 inch of a play. Don't worry about that. As long as you lock it in place, you're good. You don't want to Loctite or put like JB weld on this because you're gonna have to take this apart to put the, which I intend to do, as well as the buttstock mag pouch, and just for general maintenance. So it's better to have a little bit of wobble than to have that thing glued on and never come off, if you catch my drift. So you put your front sight back on and you put the old grub screw back on. Done. That's the easy part. The hard part is this right here. Okay, now you'll have to disassemble your old your Type 2 and Type 3 rear sight to get the Type 1 rear sight to fit. That's step one. Take it apart. There's a C-clip that holds it in place. Get that off. Your elevation bar, which tells you your yards, like 20 yards, 30 yards, 40 yards, that is attached to a screw that runs from where your C-clip was to the other side. That's also your adjustment knob on this side. So you'll have to take that out, and once you got that out, there are 2 Phillips head screws that hold that in place. Don't strip that. Make sure you get the right screwdriver for it. Because if I had a snafu happen, which I stripped both of those screws, and even with a screw extractor, I just made the problem even worse, and I ended up grinding the thing flat because I could never get it out. So once you're done with that, you got everything apart. You have now just the base of the sight, which are the sight wings and those 2 Phillips head screws in place. You take that off. Now you'll have to go out and use a Dremel and a flat file to create a new cavity for the rear sight to sit flush onto. And as you can see, mine sits at a slight 1/16 of an inch pitch angle up this way, but from a distance about there, you can't really tell unless you look up super close. I did the very best I could to get this thing to fit, and I've had my trial and error and spent a couple weeks trying to do this modification. while at work, whenever I had downtime, at night with lights just like this. And well, I've had one of two snafus. Well, let's just be honest, 3 snafus with this thing. Yeah, the first being was that I stripped 2 screws, as I said earlier. That was my first snafu. The second snafu was I lost this rear sight. I had bought the barrel band and rear sight together. Now one night when I was working on this, I was getting this thing flat. First time with a Dremel, by the way. I haven't touched any sort of tool like that since industrial arts back in high school, and that was a good part of what, 13 years ago. But I knew what I was doing. I have industrial arts experience from high school, and I even have a certificate showing that I completed the program. So I knew about safety. I know that I have to wear eyewear and, you know, gloves and things like that. I'm using the bench vise at work. Where I'm at is, you know, kind of a outdoor area with a bench vise and a table. I've got some lights with me. They're bright enough, not as bright as this, but bright enough to where I can see adequately. I'm working on this thing. My first time doing it. I have everything done. I've ground everything flat. Got that cavity created, and I'm test fitting my rear sight. I ended up losing it, and I can't find the thing. I spent a couple hours trying to you know, create a cavity so that thing would fit, and I got it very close to where I could get it to fit, and I'm checking my fit and this and that, and I ended up dropping it. It's under, you know, I'm working pretty much under a tree with leaves everywhere in the dirt, put this table right over it, and I spent hours trying to find it, and I couldn't find it. Spent hours looking and spent hours doing the work, swearing every word out of the book. I'm usually, if you know me, I'm not one to swear. Brendan doesn't do that, but I just swear every word of the book. I said some pretty harsh words that night, and you know, I have bills to pay and all that, so that's what took a couple weeks. I had to pay all that off, and I had to end up buying a new rear sight and waiting like a couple days for that thing to come in. But second time around, I learned my lesson, and this is where we get to the third snafu, which really is the smallest of them all. Is I did the final grinding on this thing, got this thing to sit perfect, almost perfect, but as you can see, it's pitched at an angle. And I already had the glue setting in place. I used JB Weld on this thing. So at that point, I just couldn't really fix it because I'm like, oh shoot, like I'm looking at it, oh shoot, it's just a little bit pointed this way, doesn't it? I'm like, oh man, I can't do anything. It's the glue's already setting. And it's another thing. The one little other snafu too is I don't know where the heck my Gorilla Glue went. So I had to use JB Weld in this place, and you know, it's not as clean as Gorilla Glue, but it's just as strong as it. But with all that said and done, with all the hair pulling I had to do and things like that to get this work done, I'm happy how it came out. I've never actually fired this rifle, but I would like to. And as you can see, yeah, there's some marring from when it was on the bench vise. So another lesson learned is get this thing covered up really well if you ever plan on using a bench vise. Or if you're ever in question, you don't want to damage any parts, take the whole thing apart down to the receiver and do it. But yeah, guys, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but it's something I'd like to share. There will be a review on this rifle in the future. This has been a little, like, almost 10-minute preview of the rifle I have now. Let's see, Venturi, Springfield Armory licensed M1 Carbine. I do intend on actually picking up a King Arms M1A1 Paratrooper carbine sometime. If I can find one, they're a little hard to find right now. And doing this very same configuration. Got to make good use of that Dremel. And another test of my skills. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.